position because the way the cameras are, and we've got a few people on Zoom, so I think this is better without having to keep my back to the camera all the time. So welcome everyone. So if I can ask those ones here, and thank you, we've got a reasonable number here, to stand for the karakia. Whakatakaho ki te uru, whakatakataho ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā tara tara ki tai. Ehi aka ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mariora. Thank you all. So, welcome everyone, and would you please let me or the Democracy Advisor know if you intend to leave the meeting. We will be breaking for morning tea around 10:30. For those colleagues on Zoom, when we resume after a break, if you could just make sure your camera's on for a wee while, just so we can see that you actually are back, that would be great. Apologies. I don't have any apologies for today. Is there anything from anyone? I'm hopefully not. We won't have to have any apologies for early departure because we should be finished.
Madam Chair, the Mayor apologies for lateness.
Who?
The Mayor.
Apologies for lateness.
Yeah,
okay.
He's being interviewed.
Okay, if we could record that. So I'll move the motion that we accept the apology from Mayor Foster. Do I have a seconder? Oh, thank you, Councillor Pennant. Please vote. Oh, he's there. Sorry, we thought we had your apologies for lateness, Mayor Foster.
I do have to duck out and do a couple of things, but I'm here.
Okay,
at the moment,
great. Oh, well,
I'll be in and out a couple of times.
We'll scrub that.
Thank you.
We'll scrub that apology then.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Just this, yeah. Colleagues, could you just keep your voice down, please? Conflict of interests. I call on members to declare any conflicts of interest. Do anybody have a conflict of interest on these papers? No. Okay. Confirmation of minutes. I move the motion that the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of October 21, having been circulated and taken as will be taken as read and confirmed as an accurate record of that meeting. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Deputy Mayor Free. I'll now put the motion forward. Those in favour, please press 1. Those against, press 2. Councillor Paul and Liz Kelly, we can't
I
see.
voted. Oh. Can you see it now?
No, it's not coming up.
Oh, well, it's yes.
Can you see mine?
Yes, now we can see that. Oh, so Councillor Paul, you're voting yes?
Yep, and I've got
Okay.
a tick on the screen. I'm not sure why I can't see it.
No. Okay. Councillor Paul's. Okay. Okay, and that's carried unanimously. There are no items not on the agenda, and we have one public participant, Maz Scannell. Welcome, Maz. As an individual, you have 5 minutes, and if you could leave a minute or so for some potentially any questions from the table, that would be great. So over to you.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, Mayor and councillors. I feel very honoured. I just wanted to talk about the increase in parking, in particular from Monday to Friday after 6 o'clock at night. I attend a community group meeting every Monday fortnight at St Andrews on the Terrace from 5:30 to 7:30. And so this is how I became aware of it. St Andrews rents out a number of rooms in the newer office area, the church hall and the supper room. So there's about 7 rooms in total. So and each group consists of about 20 people, except for the choir, which is larger. So rule of thumb is at least 100 people every night, Monday to Thursday, come to St Andrews to do various community type things. So in the past, the parking was till 6 o'clock. So people paid from sort of 5:20 to 6 o'clock and then attended the meetings till 7:30 or later. So that would cost $2. With the extension of the parking from Monday to Thursday till 8, those parks now cost $10 for the 2 hours. So the knock-on effect of this is the increase that people are no longer able to go to the meetings because it's too expensive for them to get here. Many of these people are on fixed incomes, are elderly, and I do know of 2 that come from Kandala, and that's their thing. They do family, they do church, they do choir. So these community spaces are an essential service, and it's also a third space for people to meet and enjoy a shared passion. And what I'm worried about is with the increase in the parking, it sounds so stupid, from Monday to Thursday, you're actually driving these people out of Wellington. And I'm only using St Andrews as one example. There's many places around the city centre where landlords and other churches and community type providers give these rooms to people at a decent highage. So I don't know if any of this was thought about with the decision to extend the hours to all days of the week, but the increase has had a direct impact on community groups, and I'm sure a lesser but still noticeable effect on hospitality. And I know that it's caused a lot of mental anguish for people who realise they can't continue the membership because they can't afford to park in town. So my request is that you consider just tweaking the parking from Monday to Thursday to go back to 5:30, because I think these groups are part of Wellington. You know, the increase in parking is driving behaviour that you may not have thought of, and you're isolating people whether you decided to do it or not. So it's not about cars versus bikes, it's about people, and in this case I think they got forgotten. So I thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Maz. And we have a question from the Mayor Foster.
Maz, look, thank you very much. Just 2 quick questions. First one of them is what your observation is of meeting attendances in response to that. In other words, has it changed, dropped, or not? And secondly, and the second one at the same time is just your observation of availability of car parks at that time around the, in this case, St Andrews.
Attendance-wise, I know the choir has lost about 20 people. My group is smaller, so there's usually only 20 of us anyway. So I think we've dropped 3. So, you know, percentage-wise, it's equivalent to the choir. As far as car parks availability is concerned, what I've noticed is that it used to be quite, it wasn't difficult to get a park, but there were only 2 or 3 parks. Now I would say there's 10 or 15 parks. And that's, I mean, I walk down Bolt Street and then along to St Andrews, so not all of the terrace, but, you know, that bit is where I am noticing more car parks. And I'm quite sure it's because the old ladies in Pūroro can't go to the choir anymore.
Yeah, but thanks. I've asked for some data on this, so we're having a look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Scannell. We're also probably touching on parking as part of our review of our quarterly performance, because the parking revenue is down by a reasonable amount, and maybe through the reasons that some of the things that you've covered off. So thank you for coming to talk to us.
Oh, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Okay, so I just want to talk about, I'm reordering the papers. Only a slight amendment, as you'll be aware, 2.1 has been removed for another time. There's a bit more work required to be done on that by officers. And moving 2.9 to follow after 2.7, and that's because we are looking at the quarterly performance, and then it just seemed appropriate to follow the construction market report after the quarterly performance. So in accordance with Standing Order 19.1, I will give precedence to item 2.9 so that the agenda is considered in the order just discussed. Okay. All right, so we're now moving to the statements of expectation to council-controlled organisations. Can I invite officers to introduce this and provide us with a background in terms of the process going forward, and perhaps answer any questions that we may have?
Sure. Morning, councillors. The statement of expectations paper, as much as you will have seen in previous years, with the addition of an example template, if you like, that we're hoping to move to, which is intended to help the CCOs understand what we mean when we talk about our enduring expectations, and what we also mean when we talk about our alignment with council strategic priorities. Because although we've had that expectation for a long time, we just thought it was helpful to them to clarify it and set it out and make it nice and simple, so they don't have to trawl the website looking for our various strategies and policies and all the rest of it. And so we've identified what we think are the main current ones that are important to them in the context of their statements of expectation, their statements of intent. There's a slight change in wording as well. Previously, we've always called these our letters to the CCOs a letter of expectation. And we've run that program for a long time. The Local Government Act has caught up with us now, and they've embedded in the Local Government Act this process, which we've done voluntarily. And they've called it a statement of expectations. So we just think it makes sense to line up the terminology with the Act so that there's no confusion. So instead of calling them a letter of expectations, although they will have a covering letter, we've called it a statement of expectations. And the report has an example of what we think something like that is going to look like. I think we've used a cable car for an example. And that really is mostly what the change is, if you like. The rest of it, you'll be quite familiar with our usual process. We have a very much a no surprises policy with CCOs when we deliver our expectations. So those, and nothing should have come as a surprise to any of the CCOs. In fact, I know it hasn't, because they've all been in touch with me about it. I will correct one point from yesterday's workshop, when I think John Allen may have misunderstood the question, because the question was, have you been advised, have officers engaged with you on this? And he said no, which wasn't true, because I'd spent the morning with him on it. So I just think he may have misunderstood the question. So just correcting that, really. And other than that, I think the document is pretty much self-explanatory. Happy to take any questions.
No questions? Okay, well, that's amazing. Oh, good. So you've obviously been absolutely clear in your introduction and the paper. Okay, so. Absolutely, Councillor Panish.
Well, sorry. Well, it would just be insulting to you after all the work you've done. Sorry if I've missed it, but this stuff around the not getting the money, why was that?
Do you mean the Waka Kotahi funding?
Yeah.
Look, fundamentally, it was a prioritisation by Waka Kotahi on what they would fund. Cable car just didn't make the cut. I couldn't be much more precise than that. Sorry, Councillor. The project just did not make Waka Kotahi's funding priority.
But they're working on it, right? So because obviously we want to keep going with our earthquake strengthening program.
Yeah,
It's critical.
absolutely. So our funding in the LTP remains, and in fact they're using it now to start their own reprioritisation of works within the smaller budget. Yep.
Okay, right, no more questions. We'll move on to this paper. I'm going to eat my own dog food on this. I'm going to keep very brief to any introduction and moving this motion. But as officers have pointed out, this is we're bringing our statement of expectations in line with the Local Government Act, which does have if anybody's ever read it, does have a significant section around CCOs and our roles there. I do personally like how the officers have pulled together a sort of consistent suite of expectations applicable to all the CCOs along and aligning that to our LTP. So I think that's going to work really well, and then enabling more specific ones relevant to each of those CCOs. So I will move the recommendations as they are in front of us. Is there any debate? Oh, sorry, second. Are you going to second? Thank you, Councillor Foon. Would you like to speak now? Okay, thank you. Would anybody else like to speak?
Yes, please. I have an amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Neal?
Oh, yeah.
Feel free.
I was about to stand up, but
Not council.
goodness no. Thank you, councillors. As emailed around just after 7 p.m. last night, I have an amendment with the exception of we might be changing one word, but it stands as agree that council should direct CCOs through our letters of expectation that they work with rainbow inclusivity initiatives, and note that the council has a rainbow communities advisory group who can provide support and guidance. This amendment comes about after many discussions and relationships building with our CCOs. I was a councillor on the CCO committee. I have had numerous conversations with Karen at the zoo. This has kind of come in a roundabout way from the leadership of the zoo in regards to them seeking a rainbow tick certification process. We have held a large hui from the Mayor's office that had about 100 people from our rainbow community come and engage with council. This council hosted a hui in 2016. We now have the Rainbow Communities Advisory Group, and we also have the Queer at Council Staff Network. All four of these community groups and engagement process pointed out this need for gender-neutral facilities in and around our city and other initiatives. We see this through Pride. This is in line with our council's strategic objectives around inclusive and social wellbeing of our city. I would love it if this amendment could be included into the substantive. However, I note that this does fit pretty comfortably within the social wellbeing out of the 4 social wellbeings outlined in the template with CCOs. I've had a number of conversations with people around our city and just think that this would be a really lovely signal to send that we as a council are doing a lot of the work ourselves in our own recreation and parks facilities, and noting that we all have a lot of work to do here in this space. And then, lastly, I guess just pointing out the economic benefit as a queer person myself. If I travel to a city like Melbourne or Sydney or other places, I will look and seek to ensure that this is a rainbow-friendly city, or making sure that I have safe spaces to go. And I firmly believe that this goes beyond just having a little rainbow sticker in a shop front, but it would be super lovely if our CCOs could join with us in support for our communities. Happy to answer any questions, and I'd like to welcome Fleur Fitzsimons to CQS.
Okay, so shall we, are there any questions of officers of this amendment? Councillor Young?
It's just really about the cost of the infrastructure, because gender neutral loos are not cheap, as we found when we came in here, because they're expensive to retrofit.
Councillor O'Neill could answer that in her right of reply.
Oh, okay.
But just wondering, is there any questions of officers in terms of this amendment? Deputy Mifree?
Oh, you said you would just change one word, and I'm just wondering if that statement of expectation...
No, we're talking about Councillor O'Neill's amendment that's up here.
Yeah, that's right. It says letters of expectation. I thought we had a new terminology we're using.
Yes.
Yeah.
The word that we wanted to change in the amendment, just with talks with officers, was the word direct.
Okay.
So I'm taking a poll of any possible ways that we could maybe change that word, just in terms of our relationships. It's not much a directing one.
In talking to Warwick, we'd suggest request rather than direct.
Request. Yep, happy to make that change. If that's...
Councillor Roche, did you have a question of officers?
I'm not sure if it's for officers or for Councillor O'Neill. I guess I'm just... I don't see gender-neutral facilities. I guess I do have some queries around that, and just wondering if there's any research or learnings we can take from other jurisdictions that officers might have. I'm not so concerned about cost, but it's about public acceptability in terms of men that I know, at least, comfortable with urinals. Women I know don't want men using women's toilets because they're disgusting.
Councillor Rush, I think we might, if you've got a specific question on this amendment.
Well, I'm just asking, is there any international feedback or learnings that would suggest that actually the level of public acceptability for gender-neutral facilities is
Councillor Rush, I think this is Councillor O'Neill's amendment, not the officer's resolution. So Councillor O'Neill will need to address that. It's more about the workings of this amendment. That So whether you could ask whether the officers support it or not, but something like that, but not about any research. That will Councillor O'Neill will need to address that in her right of reply.
Officers do support this, don't they?
Look, we don't really have the right people in the room to be able to answer that specific question in terms of international research, but that is something that, in the context of this resolution, would be worked through with the advisory group. In the way I see this kind of emerging is that the CCOs would have the opportunity to respond to this through their SOIs and continue this conversation through that advisory group.
Okay. I've got Deputy Mayor Free and then Liz Kelly. Questions.
So I guess my question would be, do the officers have any sense that this would be a problem? Obviously initiatives is very broad and could be, start small and go as budgets permit. Do officers have any sense that this would be a poorly received amendment by our CCOs?
Broadly speaking, no, except, and that's because we own all of the buildings that the CCOs, with the exception of the stadium. So I think I'd reserve judgment a little bit on the stadium, because it could be an impost on them that they wouldn't necessarily be expecting. But in the case of all of the other CCOs, I'm sure they're really supportive of the initiative, of the direction of travel. And I know Shane would be too, but I really can't speak for him because he owns the building, or they own the building.
Would there be any merit in adding as budgets permit after the initiatives, word initiatives? I mean, I think we have to be realistic that there may not be budgets to do really huge things, but there might be budgets to do some smaller things. I don't know.
I think that could, you probably need to, Councillor O'Neill will need to consider that.
Okay. I'll let her decide whether she wishes to call for that.
Okay. All right.
Fine.
Thank you. Liz Kelly.
Morena. Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is to the officers is, would this amendment have any financial impact? Would there be any financial impact on these organisations that they could foresee?
I think you'd say there's a potential financial impact on council, and the financial impact on the organisations to label the facilities and that kind of thing probably isn't great, but potential impact on council as the building owners, I would say exists, but I just couldn't quantify it.
So when you say council, ultimately then that's ratepayers.
Correct.
Kpi. Thank you.
Could I just add to that I think the way this amendment is worded, it would enable the pre-work for initiatives to be looked at, and then they could come through any normal budget or planning cycle. So I don't think you're signing up to unintended costs right now, that you'd have an opportunity to understand those at the right time.
Okay, I think there's no further questions of the officers. Councillor O'Neill, a second, Councillor Fitzsimons. You'd like to speak to this?
Yeah, just very briefly, I just want to thank Councillor O'Neill for bringing this amendment. I think it's the right time to be doing this, and I don't anticipate this being a problem for CCOs in any way at all. Many of them are doing leading work in this space already and actually can showcase that work to other CCOs and also across Wellington. And I appreciate that it's deliberately not overly prescriptive. It's exactly the kind of direction setting that's appropriate in this instance. And if we want Wellington to be as inclusive a city as possible, this includes our CCOs. And I welcome Councillor O'Neill's comments that this isn't just about gender neutral toilets, although these are important, and the Basin Reserve has already advanced this more recently. Gender neutral toilets are important for inclusion, but they won't happen at every CCO overnight. And I think this amendment allows and encourages CCOs to work on a broad range of rainbow inclusivity initiatives, and also gives our Rainbow Communities Advisory Group a lead role in being able to support and provide information and guidance to those CCOs, and that's exactly what we want from our advisory groups. It's a very appropriate approach to this topic. So there's lots of goodwill among CCOs in this area. They want to be doing the right thing. I think by offering up our Rainbow Communities Advisory Group, we give CCOs really appropriate support and guidance, and I think they'll welcome it. And I've been particularly impressed at the initiatives at the Basin Reserve and Shane Harmon at the stadium, who on many occasions has been a leader in this area, and I want to commend them on their work. And I actually think that those CCOs have a lot to teach many other organisations in Wellington. So I think they will welcome this, and I hope councillors do too.
Anybody else? Deputy Mayor Free?
Yes, I also thank Councillor O'Neill for bringing this. I think it is timely, as Councillor Fitzsimons has said. For me, it is about safety, and I think by giving, even if it's just signs, by giving the official acknowledgement that our rainbow communities do exist, and that we're trying to acknowledge that and make some provision for them where we can. If it's in the matter of choosing a toilet that can be everything, not described, or described in some way that's comforting and acceptable to the rainbow community. I think that's important in just generally lifting the standards of inclusion and safety in our facilities. So I am going to support this. I do want to make it clear that my support is coming with the expectation that this isn't going to immediately put huge financial pressures on organisations to do things they hadn't actually planned to do in the short term. But I think each one of our organisations can have a look and have a think about what this means for them personally, and whether that means they will have a budget expectation for us in the future. Thank you.
Councillor Young?
So just very briefly, I have already said to Councillor O'Neill that I won't be supporting this. I think it is a distraction from the huge issues that our city faces. And personally, I don't want gender-neutral lavatories. We talk about people's safety, and anyone who's been to an office Christmas party will know that often the women's lavatories are a place of safety, where they cry over things, etc. So, if we're talking about safe places to go, I think women's lavatories have long been a safe place for women to go. And of course, I am always concerned about the potential cost. So I think we have lots of different communities in the city which may justifiably think that they need to have special protection around them, and I'm certainly very supportive of the rainbow community, but I think this is just a distraction when most Wellingtonians just want us to get on with fixing the pipes and fixing the roads and making sure the street lights work.
Thank you. I think I've got Councillor Rush. Did you have your hand? Was Councillor Rush?
I did.
Today?
Got them both up now.
I know. I'm just trying to determine whether it was you or Councillor Day was first.
We do look the same.
I know you do. No.
And we always speak the same way.
Okay, I think Councillor Rush, how about you go first, then Councillor Day, then Councillor Hannah.
So I'm a little bit in two minds. I think the message is good. Actually, when we talk about this as timely, no, the time for this was 20, 30 years ago in the 1980s. I'd like to think that our society's moved well past accepting people irrespective of who they like to make love to. But nevertheless, I think the intent's a good one. And I just wanted to say it is timely in the sense that I did a tour of the stadium as part of my role as a trustee a couple of days ago, and our new chair, Rachel Tulule, pointed out that this row of urinals where the All Blacks would get changed, and there's this row of urinals. And she just made the very, very understated comment that who would have thought in 2021 there'd be all these toilets just for men. And I just thought that was beautifully put, and it's completely true. Now, the Basin have made big modifications, and that's because of the Women's Cricket World Cup, and there's been funding made available for that. In fact, in reality, though, sports teams who are generally of homogenous gender, we need to realise that the future of sports like rugby and cricket lies not with men but with women and young kids and so forth. So providing safe places and facilities that they all can use is important. Rachel did point out one interesting point you might want to think is that men tend to be comfortable showering with each other and women not so. So interesting point there. And that just shows the the complexity of that particular issue. And I do also acknowledge Councillor Young's comment. Certainly, I won't go into it too much more, but I mean, it has been commented to me that women prefer to have women's only spaces, and I can understand that. But that's a layer of complexity that I think can be worked through on a case-by-case basis. So I'm prepared to, I think, support this amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Rush. Councillor Day.
Kia ora, and I too want to thank Councillor O'Neill for the mahi she's done on this, and actually also for the way that she's done it in an inclusive way. You've done your homework, so thank you. You've talked to the CCOs and made sure that you've got feedback from them on what would work and how that could be best achieved. And I just wanted to reflect that yesterday when we were listening to the CCOs, they did actually reflect back to us that that these statements of expectation, they do actually really help them, particularly with getting funding and just having a really clear set of directions. And actually what we're doing is saying that this is a consistent thing across our city. And I think it's actually really important. And I know that it does help them with getting funding and making sure that they are moving our city into a space where we can feel proud and we know that it's truly inclusive. And I just want to respond to the toilet scenario conversation and just want to say technology's come a really long way, and actually that gender neutral toilets are quite different to what people probably think of, and that actually you do have your own space when you go in there, and they can be done in a way that is really, safe for people and inclusive. And actually, I would rather have that than the number of times that I've accidentally walked into the men's toilets because the sign wasn't very good. And So, sorry, I've just lost my microphone. So I fully support this, and thank you, Councillor O'Neill. Awesome mahi.
Thank you, Councillor Day. Councillor Pannett.
Really briefly, Councillor O'Neill, thank you very much. I'm going to be strongly supporting your amendment, so thank you very much. And I think we should be proud of the fact that, for those who are a little bit hesitant about voting for this, we have put all sorts of things into the CCO letters of expectations, you know, around waste and around sexual violence and all that sort of stuff. So this is another thing. And I think also it's incumbent on us who are not part of a community to listen to communities who are impacted. So if people are saying they are not safe or they have needs that are unmet, that is part of our core business as local government to meet all the well-beings. So I'm very, very comfortable with ratepayer money going in to meet the needs of every group in our community, and people can line up if they wish that their needs are not being met, and we will hopefully do our best to do that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Free.
Speak twice, but I really had to respond to the comment that most Wellingtonians want us to do the pipes and whatever, blah, blah, blah. The whole point of this is it isn't about most Wellingtonians. It is about actually trying to address the needs of a diversity of Wellingtonians. And it also reminded me that when I was young and my son was about 8, it was actually pretty awkward taking him into the ladies' toilets, and I ended up having to leave him to go by himself into the men's toilets, standing outside worrying when he didn't come out. You know, it took a super long time over something, and thinking, is he actually okay in there? And, you know, so this is actually about a diversity of needs. It is not about what most Wellingtonians want us to do, and things that we decide are not always about actually the majority. Sometimes they're about catering to the needs of important minority groups. So for that reason alone, I'm now even more determined to vote for this, regardless of budgets. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Free.
Who are the majority?
Councillor Paul.
Yeah, tēnā tātou. I just wanted to say, join in thanking Councillor O'Neill for this amendment, and just reflecting on the debate that there's been a lot of conversation about men and women, and I think, you know, the kind of important thing to acknowledge here is that there are a lot of non-binary people in our community, and that means people that do not subscribe to either the male or female identity, and actually that in a lot, if not all, Indigenous cultures, there are more than just men and women as rigid categories for gender. And in fact, there is a spectrum that exists, and there are many people who exist along that spectrum. And acknowledging that in their existence and their identity means that they should be able to do something as simple as going to the bathroom without feeling they need to sacrifice parts of their identity or feel unsafe entering into different bathrooms. So thank you, Councillor O'Neill. It's good to have you there and understanding that nuance, and that male and female bathrooms are very colonial, and we need to get rid of that concept and make sure that people feel comfortable and are able to do something that simple. And we know that people that are non-binary or trans experience bladder problems more often because they often have to hold their pee in because they are too scared to go to the bathroom that they identify with. So kia ora, thank you for your work. This is a justice issue, but this is also a health issue. It's an equity issue, and it's important that you've raised it and that we've been able to debate it today. So on behalf of all of my friends and whānau who are takatapui, which is the Indigenous, non-binary and gender and sexual non-conforming identity of Aotearoa, thank you for making our CCOs more inclusive.
Thank you. Liz Kelly.
Oh, kia ora. I sat here and listened to the debate, and I have to say that I agree with Nicola. Sorry, Nicola, I forget your surname. Councillor Nicola. I do agree that this is a distraction, and that there are important things that we need to address. I believe that we in New Zealand have a culture of, and in Wellington City, a culture of inclusion, and I think that this addresses this. So having said that, I've weighed up what the amendment is, and there is no direct instruction to do this. So even though my question was around the financial implications, and there is that there, I believe that our CCOs will be able to decide for themselves. And with that culture of inclusion that we have developed here, I think that let's just get on with it. And so, well, I do agree with Councillor Nicola that this is a distraction, and I keep saying this as because I believe it is, and that we should just get on with it. It's not going to hurt one way or another. I think it's not necessary to have it there, but if there is a feeling that it does need to be there, then okay, Kpi, it's there, and it's going to be. There's no direct instruction for the organisations to do this, but a clear expectation that that's the direction that the council would like them to take. So I'll support this based on that. But can we move on to the vote, Madam Chair?
Thank you. Well, I would, but I think you're the. I will now speak. I just want to say a couple of things. I do agree with your sentiments, Liz Kelly, and also those of Councillor Young. Really, it's a very. It's a very broad amendment here, but it seems to have gone down into the discussion about toilets, and I just want to say, look. It was only the other week that we had a discussion about disabled toilets and how we weren't providing sufficient facilities for those. And now we're talking about gender-specific toilets. And I really think we need to get our priorities sorted. This doesn't sort out our priorities. We've got our priorities, the statement of expectations. We've lifted the level, and so that they do align and reflect what the council has agreed on, and in its funding arrangements as well. So yes, it's probably, this amendment's probably not going to cause any harm, but it doesn't actually specifically guide the CCOs any more than what's already in the various LTP priorities. So yes, I think we should move on to a vote. It's not something to die in a ditch over, but personally, I won't be supporting this amendment. Councillor O'Neill.
Thank you. I just want to thank all my colleagues for keeping the debate really constructive. And I take a lot of the points that have been raised. The first one that I would like to respond to is that this is rainbow initiatives, not rainbow facilities. We did look at rainbow facilities, but the point of this and the point of the zoo's journey is inspired that this journey is non-linear and things will look very different to perhaps the Basin Reserve, who have already had very a strong critical lens placed on them in terms of their facilities that they provide to players and patrons. And we also made sure to say initiatives because we know that the Sky Stadium is made of concrete and things might be a little bit more difficult to change, and that hopefully, you know, we can see the flow on of this into other events. This is, as we've canvassed in the pre-works, and an opportunity for all of our people to feel welcome. Having a culture of inclusion is not the same as a lived experience and understanding of how you feel in this city, and that's why I think our Rainbow Communities Advisory Group can provide really great support and advisement. Councillor Free, I just wanted to address your question from before. I don't feel adding as budgets permit as within the remit, because at the beginning of a journey we don't know what we're going to end up as. It might be something completely out of the blue, it could be something really innovative that we haven't seen from our other partners. And our CCOs are able to talk to us in their statement of intent and hopefully come and talk to the advisory group as well. There are many people across our Pacifica Advisory Group, across AAG, Youth Council, Rainbow Communities Advisory Group. I'm not sure about ERG, but I do know that we have gender diverse people in whawhawhine, takatapui, non-binary and gender fluid and intersex identities, which I think are really valuable and important. I'd like to thank our Councillor Fleur Fitzsimons and Tamitha Paul for being really vocal allies of our community, and I know that you've supported other initiatives in the past. Supporting rainbow communities does not preclude the safety of women. We have had this debate time and time again. Our vision is for all transgender and gender diverse people to be empowered by the full range of choices across all aspects of life, not just in some really slim ally cafes or other things. And I'd like to note the complete lack of rainbow infrastructure in our city. Scotty and Mouse is shutting down. We just have Ivy Bar. The library is no longer open. In terms of the spaces that are visibly safe to people who live this experience every day, like myself, there are a very limited amount of choices. And if we can say as a city, you're welcome at the Zealandia, you're welcome on the cable car, that will make a huge difference. Lastly, I can assure Councillor Rush, I've done my research. I live this experience of being queer every single day. I have followed Te Pai Mahutonga Māori health reports and approaches to queer and Takatapui communities. I brought one of the first petitions to Parliament around conversion therapy that garnered 20,000 signatures. I submitted on the BDMR bill. I've done...
Councillor Neal, can I keep you to the right of reply?
Yes. I'm just saying, I've done my research. I live this experience every day. We've hosted a hui of 100 people in the Mayor's office who have outlined us, as well as my own relationships with Queer at Council that I'm really proud of, the internal staff networks, the diversity and inclusion strategy. This is the right time to bring it, and I hope I've addressed and alleviated maybe some of the concerns.
Thank you. So we will now move to the vote.
Can we take a division on this one, please?
Sure. If you could please vote now, you know what to do. Oh, did it not press? Oh, the mayor, is the mayor around? It looks like he may have ducked out, so he's not. Yeah. Oh, sorry, it was passed with only 2 votes voting against, which was myself and Councillor Young. And I also asked members here that I know you want to sort of promote this vote, but if you could do it appropriately in terms of why the ones of us who did vote against it, why our rationale would be appropriate. Thank you. Keeping reasonably to time, and for those of us in the room, the timer is on. It's not binding, but the timer is on. So if you see the timer off, it means you might have gone over. Yeah. You don't get yourself on for the last right of reply. Thank you all. So we will move now to the next paper. Oh, sorry, the substantive. Okay, so we'll move to the substantive. Is there any debate? Councillor Foon, you want? Oh, yes, would you like to speak? Thank you.
Oh, there's my timer. Okay. Kia ora, and really, I really just want to acknowledge the mahi and the care and everything that our CCOs brought and showed us yesterday. And it is always an honour to work alongside them, and I think they're a very inspiring part of the Wellington City whānau. And I think it is really important that we make sure that at all levels there is a collaborative partnership and acknowledgement of the leadership that they bring to our city, and as in the vote we've just seen, that actually many of our CCOs are already taking the lead on that, and actually councillors coming in behind often, and particularly examples with Wellington Zoo, who just time and time again are really piercing forward with new ideas. So we've got a lot to learn from them. But I really think the direction we're taking going forward is exciting. I think one of the feedbacks I've had from our CCOs is that they're not really clear on our direction. So having the strategic direction, the priority objectives, and our wellbeing strategies clearly outlined will enable the CCOs, who are already doing the work anyway, to actually feed into the narrative for our city. And there's a bit of work to do, I think, in the reporting to marry that better. So I look forward to seeing that happen. I think particularly the tailoring letter, like that was one of the feedbacks from last year, was that it was an overview given it was a new council. So it's really exciting to see that we've got the opportunity for each direction to be working with each CCO. But I really would like to see that as a collaborative approach, not a directive, so that we're working on it together. Just particularly, I just wanted to outline Wellington NZ. It feels like for a city, we've got the challenge of direction where we're putting a lot of eggs in one economic basket, and that is going hard to attract visitors to Wellington. And I think we've just seen that diversification would be a really good thing to be thinking about right now. While I'm not saying we don't want to go hard at attracting visitors to Wellington, I think that we should equally be enabling other areas to create economic benefit for the city. So that's something that, but I was heartened in the Q&A where I saw that the part of the regional strategy response was that was opportunity to look for quality tourism over volume. And I think going forward for the future, that's a really important part, and I will continually be pushing for this. So yes, so just really keen on the new structure going forward, really want to make sure we work on a collaborative working with and partnership approach, and continually acknowledge the leadership and the work that our mahi, that our CCOs do for the city.
Thank you, Councillor Fern, and you were just over time. Not quite. Deputy Mayor Free, did you want to speak?
Right, 3 minutes.
You don't have to actually speak if you don't want to.
No, I do want to. I just want to say that in the Winter report, one of the points was that we needed to have a closer relationship with our CCOs and value the work that they're doing. And it was, thank you, Councillor Calvert, for organising that separate workshop we had yesterday when we were able to hear from almost all of them. It was wonderful. What the point I want to make, which I didn't bring any amendments about because I thought it would happen anyway, but I think it is worthwhile noting that there's still improvements in my mind, and I have talked to some of our officers about this, as to the reporting could match back better to the statement of expectation and the statement of intent, so that we do our governance role, knowing that the reports we're getting reflect back to what we said we were jointly, what Council said and what our CCO said we would try to achieve or wanted to achieve. But this was brought into focus for me with the basin, which I've always taken a bit of an interest in. Some of the things we said in the past is we wanted better access around the basin, and we wanted the basin to be presented better to the city. And actually that's happened. It's really clear that's happened, but it wasn't the connection between what the outcome was and the fact that we'd actually requested that and agreed with them that this would happen wasn't really evident in the report. So I think if we can just get that message across without needing an amendment, of course, it would be really great. Thank you. It's great work being done. It's fantastic. And I have a minute 32.
Excellent. You get a gold coin. So look, I will now jump in and do my right of reply. Thank you all. I think it's great to acknowledge the CCOs, and I will say a little bit more about it in the next paper. Absolutely agree with you, Deputy Mayor Free, on the reporting back, and that's something that officers are well aware of, and we'll be working on this along with the new process around the statement of expectations, so that when the quarterly reporting comes in, it will be more aligned to what we've asked for them. So thank you for raising that point. So I think we can just move now to vote. I think we'll take them all together. Is everyone comfortable with that? Okay, so if you could all vote now, we're voting for all of the recommendations as per the paper. And I'm assuming that Councillor O'Neill's one's included now in this. Okay. All right, thank you. And that's all carried unanimously, so thank you all. It is 10:25. We've got Do you want to do a full program? Okay, so we'll do the actions and the forward program. If we can get those through in the next 5 minutes. We're on a roll. I'm going to set a record. Okay, no, we will do them. We will do them separately because don't want to. Okay, we're moving to 2.10 actions tracking. And this is a receiving information one, and I just probably need to get my. It's such a big agenda. Page 533.
Very useful, thank you, Chair.
So, so there's a. I'm assuming there's no further. I don't think there's any questions of officers on this paper. No. No one's got their hands up. Okay. Well, look, I will move that we receive the information. It's good to see that we're tracking our actions and our initiatives and enabling's done. I notice the list is already quite large, but there's a lot of complete, so they're all complete, so which is great. Could I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Foon. We'll move straight to any debate. Sorry. Okay, we'll move to vote. We got Foster must be away, so so that was carried unanimously. Thank you. So we will now move on to the forward program. Are there any questions of officers, Councillor Foon?
Yes, the paper that was taken off today. Do we have an ETA on when that will come back?
Probably February.
Makes sense.
I don't believe that there's no meeting planned in December, which is why our next meeting is actually February. So that. So unless there's a matter of urgency, which I hope there isn't. So yeah. So any debate? Have I moved it? Oh, I moved it, and who seconded it? Oh yeah. Sorry. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Deputy Chair. Thank you. All right. Well, please vote, which is. And thank you. That was carried unanimously as well. So we are taking a break now. I think we've got a 15-minute break. So we'll be back here at 10:45. Thank you. resume the meeting. The next paper is the review of the Q1 reports for the council-controlled organisations, which is followed by the paper on the actual annual reports for the CCOs. But I'm going to introduce both papers, but for this paper, I will basically be speaking to all around the whole performance of our CCOs to save a little bit of time. So I would just first up, I will call on officers to answer any questions that may be required. I'm going to take it, because we had that briefing yesterday, I'm going to take it that you've read the reports and that, and I know you've had an opportunity to ask questions, but are there any further questions of officers at this point? Councillor Foon.
Yeah, my question is around the venues review. I don't know if that's the right term to use, but out of Ahotini, we got the go-ahead to look at our Wellington NZ venues with the view to enabling more community and local artists to have easier, better access. So understanding there could be a financial implication, will that be in time for the annual plan?
Is that in respect of what? Which of this paper, though?
Yeah, fair enough. That is a forward question rather than, but it is part of this. It is what they were to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, if officers want to answer, or alternatively, maybe take it offline.
Sure. All these thoughts in the night.
I think, councillors, at the time that resolution was passed, I think March was the date for reporting back, and obviously our annual plan would go out for consultation in about April, I think, through to finalising it in June. So potentially there is time to
should be in line.
Anything into
okay, great, thank you.
Was Councillor Roche? Did you have a question? Or was it just waving? Oh, okay. No, sorry. Any other questions? I don't see any online. Okay. All right. Well, look, I'm going to move this paper. It's essentially is receiving the information, and we had a really good conversation with our CCOs yesterday afternoon. I think what we can see is that they have over the past, in particular, the past 18 months, they've, like this council, have had to pivot their business, especially when a lot of their business does rely on tourists or visitors to Wellington. And what we were able to see is quite a bit of innovation as well, and new thinking, and actually targeting our own domestic market more rather than people outside of the region or overseas. So what we're seeing is a tailoring of products for Wellingtonians, and an example is the current the bark and ride with dogs on cable cars, and seeing how they're innovating, and we're seeing some we're seeing some really great work. Museums Trust with that navigators, and I know a lot of you really can't wait to see it. I'm privileged enough to see it. It's fantastic. So we're still seeing them be able to produce things for Wellingtonians and for the city, but recognizing that there is some strong financial challenges because they aren't getting the same numbers of people through the doors. So, but we are, we remain highly supportive because we know that this is all these things actually add to the value of Wellington and what Wellington's all about. So I put forward these recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Is Councillor Foon? Would you like to speak?
I'll hold.
Would anybody else like to speak to this? Okay. All right, Councillor Foon.
Okay, just really quickly. I really do want to acknowledge all of our CCOs for the massive mahi, as we've discussed, and they demonstrated so well today. And I thought much of it was very much in a very, I don't love the word quirky, but it was unique to each organisation, and I think that's what makes Wellington so special, is that everyone brings a slightly different way that they do things, and each of them was inspiring in their own way. I do want to acknowledge that last year we did have the letters in the statements of expectation around meeting, working toward our te atakura and our waste minimisation goals, and I'm sure you can see me as an emotional soul, but I did have a few moments yesterday where I was very moved by what people were doing, particularly around their waste initiatives and the way that they were moving toward that. So, I just want to really thank them all for the work and the unique way that they're bringing their impact there. I do want to acknowledge Councillor Fitzsimon's question of John Allen when she asked him what more he would see that he would do, and his answer was very strong, and it came later, but I think it's really important to acknowledge that investing more into student development and young people. And I really think that's an exciting opportunity for Wellington, given that over half of our population are under 35. And just knowing what the Summer of Tech initiative has brought for our city, and really helping produce more people ready for our digital sector. So that kind of initiative, I think we should really work with John closely on what he's seeing. He's on the ground, and we should really listen to that and take that on board. But yeah, just a big acknowledgement, and really want to continue that work, as they said, that collective impact, support the CCOs working together, and that we're stronger together, and they've really led with good example there.
Thank you. And Councillor Foon, you were well within time this time. So well done. So, all right, there's no further speakers, so I won't exercise a right of reply, so we will move straight to the vote. I'm taking them all together. And that was carried unanimously. We will now move to the review of the annual reports, and again, unless there's any specific questions of officers, we will take it as read, given our briefing we had yesterday. No questions of officers? No? Okay. All right. Well, I will move these recommendations. I think I've covered off most of what I wanted to say on the previous paper, but other just to acknowledge that probably a bit like people in our organisation, the City Council, is we can see that people are exhausted. With this, they're having to pivot all the time and change, and I'm sure that's reflective right across the country as well. So, but they still turned up with a smile on their face, yes, and still positive about the future. So, but this is really just to acknowledge that the work that the council-controlled organisations are doing to help our city get back on track as we move through the impacts of COVID. So and just on a minor thing, noting that some of the CCOs are still waiting for the final audits of their annual reports, and as we know what we've been through, it's understandable, but we're not expecting any significant issues from that. So is there, Councillor Foon, would you like to second? Thank you. Would you like to speak? Does anybody like to speak? Right, well, no right of reply, and we'll move straight to voting. Wow. Please vote. I reckon I'm going to get all those gold coins. I have no idea. Oh, thank you. That's carried unanimously. And I'm old enough to remember the 50-cent coins used to be almost this big. Okay, so we're now on to 2.5, which is the review of the half-year report to Wellington International Airport, page 457. Again, I'll take this as read because we did have a briefing with the airport last month. Is there any questions of officers?
So I just want to check. I think in their annual report they said that the Mayor attended 2 out of their 7 meetings last financial year. Am I right in thinking that Ms Hay is there when he's not there?
Either myself or another representative like Danny McComb.
Okay. It just seems a pity as part of the role is, nothing against the officers, but a pity when part of the role is the kind of a liaison between councillors and the airport. So yet again, I would just say I am concerned that the Mayor is our director. It's not really, well, it's half a question, half a statement.
Noted.
Not really, yeah.
Any other questions of officers? Councillor Foon?
That possible loan that we still have for Wellington Airport, can I just be reminded of the date that will take us through till?
30 June 22.
30 June 22. Okay. And next question, are there any forward financial forecasts that the airport is working toward?
That's a great opportunity for your board representative to share that information with you.
And I'd very much assume that there are forecasts because the airport is a very strong commercial company, so I'm sure they'll have those in place. Any other questions? Okay. Look, I'll introduce this paper. It's really just a receiving information. It is what it is. This is their financial statements for 6 months. So there's probably not too much to say on this. Is there? Do I have a seconder, Councillor Foon, or somebody else? Deputy Mayor Free, thank you. Would you like to speak?
No, I don't think I have anything to add to the actual numbers.
Would anybody else like to speak to this? Okay, well, right, so no right of reply, and we will move straight to the vote, which is receiving the information. And thank you, that's carried unanimously. Right, we next have the health and safety report on page 469 of your agenda. Welcome officers, welcome Meredith, and welcome to Wendy in your, I think it's the first time we've seen you officially in your new role, so nice to have you here on this. Meredith, would you like just to touch briefly on anything that you think is relevant since the time the report's been written to where we are now? If there's any significant change.
Thank you, and it's an ever-moving feast, isn't it? Particularly COVID. So a lot has changed since we wrote this. I almost cried when I went through the notes before. Like, where do I start? And as you can appreciate, even from when we did the survey for our staff in mid-October, where we had an outstanding response to vaccination uptake, at this point we believe this will be even higher, particularly after Super Saturday, and then the ongoing mandates, particularly around education with the health order. I did want to just draw your attention to the fact that while we do have an absence of clear guidance and mandate at the moment from central government as they work through it themselves, we are continuing with a lot of work around health and safety risk assessments of roles, and looking at where those fit in and how we will operationalise the traffic light system once it comes into place, which is no easy feat because, as you know, we deliver over 400 services. So trying to apply that with a different lens on, albeit health and safety lens, does mean that it takes time to work through, and we're having to make a number of assumptions. But we are expecting guidance by the end of November, early December, from both Tahua and central government, which will help us make more informed decisions. That includes whether or not our facilities, public facilities, excluding the gyms will, whether or not they will have to be vaccine entry only facilities. So we will keep you up to date on that as well. I will take obviously the report as read. I wanted to thank you as well for your support with the video that we sent out around personal confrontation. I know a lot of you messaged us and also shared it on your social media. That was very much appreciated by our staff. And I know a lot of you were moved just like we were, and this is an ongoing issue that we are continually having to monitor and support our staff in. The other area I just wanted to highlight was around staff pressures and workload. Over and above what I've written in here, we have since had 3 workshops, 2 internally, and also we spearheaded a workshop with councillors from the Wellington region. So that included Hutt City, Upper Hutt, Wellington Regional Council and Pūroro. Unfortunately, Kapiti couldn't make that, and where we are continuing to work together to how do we collectively address the talent shortage. Rather than Robbie and Peter to pay Paul from councils, how do we make sure that we are working together to somehow overcome this incredible talent shortage that we're experiencing? So that was finished on Friday, and we have some actions out of that, including career pathways within local government and highlighting those. Together collectively and flexibly, how we can also offer staff shared accommodation and make their lives easier if they are able to use other offices and whatnot, and just look at various things to be more attractive collectively. So those are the main areas. I just wanted to say that we did bring back the personal confrontation at request of Councillor Foon. Because that was as a result of the last Audit and Risk Subcommittee where you asked for more information around parking, and that was why that was in there as well. But that's all.
Are there any questions of officers? Councillor Pennant?
Thank you very much, Meredith, for the work you're doing. I deliberately want to ask this question in public because I guess I just, around vaccinating staff, I get there are complexities, I get there are vulnerabilities, but I also think it is very critical that our messaging is important, that we are clear that there is an expectation for the good of the community, that we have a high expectation that people will listen to the evidence and vaccinate. And I guess I've just been getting a bit of messaging from you that just feels like we've got to tread softly, when I do consider this as a public health crisis. So we just need to get people across the line as much as possible. And so I guess the question really is about whether your line on this is maybe solidifying a little bit, and of course you obviously have to adhere to the law.
So your question is whether or not we're accepting whether or not staff will.
Well, I guess I would like to see that our leadership message is that it is important to get vaccinated, it is safe to get vaccinated, and we really want you to, because it just has sounded a bit.
You just turn that into a bit of more of a question.
Yeah, the question has been that it sounded the messaging I've got from you in emails has been a bit, we just sort of have to listen to people and all the rest of it. And I am just concerned that we do have a really strong set of messaging. And is that something that you would agree with as a question?
Respectfully, no. We do have to listen to the legislation. We do have to consult with our staff, and we do have to take a health and safety stance. We're working with our unions on this as well, who have been incredibly supportive. And ideally, yes, the majority of our staff will be vaccinated, but at this point in time, unless the government changes its legislation, I don't believe that we have the ability to do so. In the meantime, we continue to educate our staff and make it as easy as possible to get vaccinations and message that continually as well.
So then the following question is, would you support compulsory vaccination for everyone?
Position, Iona. Yeah.
Through you, Chair, I just want to clarify what Meredith is saying here is that we are complying with our health and safety obligations and our good employer obligations, and it isn't appropriate for a manager of this council to publicly state an opinion on mandatory vaccinations or not. I am very confident, though, that the way in which we are communicating with our staff clearly emphasises our support for vaccination as the safest way to prevent vulnerability in the face of a spreading COVID virus. But we are following proper procedure, and the ultimate outcome will be the one we think is best for both our staff and for our customers. But we're certainly not going to, nor should we, take a blanket approach.
And can I just say that I think I'll just draw a line under that questioning. This is it is operational. The CEO is responsible for the health and safety of our, and so I think.
Can I just say, we are also responsibility for the safety of our city. So I get all that, but I'm asking the question on behalf of the public who doesn't also want to get COVID. So I'm just still a bit concerned, but I'll take that offline.
Okay, thank you. I think we've got Councillor Foon next. Councillor Foon?
Yes, so I guess just and appreciating the complexities around this messaging from the government, but just a question that we've got all of our CCOs as one whānau that will be working together with a consistent approach across the whole organisation.
That's correct, and so we stay in regular contact with them. We've shared everything we've done so far around our vaccination policy and the other work that we had done based on the health order. Some of the CCOs are in a position to make more stronger decisions at this point because hospitality and events falls under the government guidance at this point. But within 2 to 3 weeks, we'll be in a better space to really understand what this means for all of us, including our CCOs. Great. And ideally, local government as a sector will be taking a consistent approach.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Meredith.
Thank you. No other questions of officers?
I did have a question, and it's picking up on comments that you made earlier in the meeting, actually, Councillor Calvert, around everybody feeling quite sort of stressed and at the end of their tether, and probably staff and councillors and others. And I know you've talked about the support provided for that. What works? What works in terms of providing people with, support to get through what is a, global pandemic and a very stressful time? So do you have any insights as HR about kind of what support works for people, and we all might do with hearing them?
The sci-fi fan in me really wishes we could clone people at this point, and we have to take a pragmatic approach because we can't just keep throwing wellbeing initiatives at people, or resilience training or EAP. That's a plaster and it's a band-aid. Where we need to really have courage is to prioritise what we can and cannot achieve right now as an organisation and in partnership with you for the risk of burning people out. That has to be the number one mitigation when we look at this from a health and safety lens. While we continue to look at all these other things around our workforce and how do we attract, how do we retain, there's no silver bullet. And we're feeling it being in Wellington because central government has deeper pockets and an ability to attract right now, and contractors are almost impossible to get hold of themselves. So it's listening to our people. It is It's practicing kindness. It's not a particularly silver bullet answer. Sorry, Councillor Fitzsimmons.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Free.
I thought it was really excellent, actually, your initiatives about family time and taking holidays and times in the sun. My question is, how are we going on leave, annual leave? Have we got people who are behind, lots of people who are behind on leave?
So we have been actively working with our staff to take leave. Obviously, at times it's difficult when there is no one to take up the workload, but over Christmas we are targeting, ELT talked about this earlier this week, targeting making sure that we drop those annual leave liabilities to as low as possible.
Okay, Councillor Foon.
Yes, thank you, and it was a lovely read for me looking at our new wellbeing framework, and I wondered, is one of the response, given what's going on around us, but for our team, do you feel like there will be or has started to be some relief? It's almost like it's enabling you to, even as a councillor, go, actually, that's really important. So do you feel like our team are feeling that better, I'm hoping, or having better wellbeing through realising that we're in a more understanding space through the strategy?
Just for clarity, we had a lot of wellbeing initiatives, and we did have a program before. This is a refreshed one based on those pillars. So we have been undertaking a considerable amount of wellbeing initiatives, particularly in the last 21 months, as we navigate through uncertainty and anxiety. And that has been really well received. And as you know, the Chief Executive reported our initiative over the last lockdown. We're 2 weeks of pure wellbeing program, getting amazing speakers like Dr. Susie Wiles, and we have heard back what a difference it made for people to get through that time. For some reason, the second lockdown was harder than it was last time, and the amount of messages have been quite overwhelming to both the Chief Executive and ELT around thank you for taking our wellbeing so seriously, because we're struggling, and we know that you have got our backs. So that was, I believe Barbara shared some of those as well with you. So and we continue to do that. Obviously, our focus is going to be more targeted as mental health issues continue to rise as a result of COVID being in the community, and as we learn to live and work with it. Noting that it also now has an impact on your nervous system after 20 months of being in an emergency response mode. Our bodies are no longer able to cope with it, and then with that is then increasing mental health issues. So how we respond to that as well is also top of mind for us.
And just apologies if the way I asked the question implied that we didn't have a health and safety. I know, I'm particularly proud of that about our council, so thank you for your work on that.
If anything, the inclusion strategy has just been received so beautifully and so welcomed, because it was co-designed by our staff, and it represents their ambitions and their needs from us as a good employer.
Thank you, Meredith. That's the end of the questions. So we will now move to the paper, and I will be moving the recommendation. I think it's really important in our role as officers. There's one time we can say we're officers under the Health and Safety in the Workplace Act, that we do carry out due diligence and ensure that we are operating effectively and making sure that the systems and things are in place. And health and safety has changed considerably in the last 12 to 18 months because of the pandemic. And so, and we do know through COVID, things are continually changing. When the borders open more fully, I'm sure we will deal with this different set of challenges in the next few months. And there's only so much planning that we can do. So we have to be cognizant. And I think our chief people officer, I think was a request to say we need to have courage with prioritisation on what we want to do. And I know it's a challenge because often everyone has their own things that they want to see the city take forward. But as we've heard, is we have got we're constrained with not being able to get all the right resources that we need. And we're hearing not only from our CCOs, but also our council, the continually having to rethink how we do some of the work as well. So that takes energy. And when we come to think about what we want to achieve over the next wee while, that we need to be cognizant of what we actually can achieve. So thank you, officers, for bringing this to us. Even over a couple of months, how things change and probably changing week by week at the moment. And we absolutely understand that you are doing your utmost best to knowing that you have to work within the framework of central government legislation as well, and we as a city can't even mandate all our residents to go and get vaccinated. So we have to work within the legislation. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Foon, would you second? And okay, Councillor Foon, do you wish to speak?
Just to thank you for your words, Chair, and thank the team for the mahi. And actually, I have a word for councillors. In fact, I'm going to ask if our lovely MSARs will help by putting that wellness strategy up in our own office. I think we could also do with it and be part of working alongside the team in achieving that kaupapa. But also, I do want to acknowledge our parking staff and the frontline challenges that they have, and I would like to keep that at the top of the list and keep that coming through so that we're aware. And I try and give a friendly wave and, like a big hello to our parking staff when I'm on the street. So I do encourage people to say, you're doing a great job and we thank you. So, yeah.
Thank you. Would anybody else wish to speak? No. Please don't take no one wanting to speak as they are absolutely on board with you. But we don't want to carry on the pain any further for you standing there. So, So I will. We'll now move to vote, and you know what to do. And Councillor Paul? Oh, yes, it's up, yeah. So, they forgot to press your button, Councillor Paul.
It's like green right here on my screen.
Yeah. No, somebody has to use your device here, so.
Yeah,
to
okay.
register, yeah.
Use mine.
That's carried unanimously, thank you. Okay, we now have the next paper on page 477, which is our Q1 performance report. And I invite officers to come up and talk us through this briefly. As I mentioned to you previously, is that this is adopting a new reporting format. Following and lined up to our new LTP. So you will see a lot of change and also a work in progress because it's the first one. So there's certainly continuous improvement in play. So thank you, Lloyd.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, councillors. I won't labour this too much, but I think the covering paper has set out the context for it, so I'll take that as broadly read. A couple of points that I would make just in introducing the quarterly report itself is this is the next step in the evolution of the report itself, with a particular focus on establishing a point from which we can compare and report on progress against our LTP, something we've not done in the past, and particularly focusing on our 6 key strategic priorities as well as our activity areas sitting underneath that. And this approach, of course, aligns with the mandate of this committee around its governance and oversight role. So we've specifically had an eye to that, as well as looking at the reporting and a lot of the other reporting in detail, which goes to other committees itself, and trying not to duplicate that as well. So we're taking a direction approach. This is the starting point. You'll recall the ELT introduced a new Kpi framework, where I think, to your relief, we've gone from 300 to about 93 KPIs themselves, and that opens it up for some more concise and more focused activity reporting as well. And it also allows us to, going down the track, to focus on what does all this mean as well. Given it's a new LTP, this Q1 is probably what we call time one. It is the point it establishes a benchmark for us to do our ongoing monitoring against and how we're progressing. And as part of that, in the past, we haven't produced a Q4 report. That's been the annual report, but we will be doing that now because we see this as a rolling basis of reporting against the LTP itself. So those are the broad contextual elements to it. In terms of the structure of the report, you'll see it sets out the headlines and then drops into an A3 size page of very visually produced graphs and so on, which sets out the key information sitting in there. We've had some really helpful feedback from the Chair and Deputy Chair, and thank you for that. This will be an ongoing development process. So this is the starting point, and we'd be really pleased to receive any feedback from councillors on enhancements we can make, how we can present information in a way which makes it even more consumable and so on. So we're very open to that as we progress, and if you want to drop into chat and do that, we'd welcome that at any time. In terms of the headlines for this report, in terms of our capital program, you do have a paper coming up next, and this report does align to that. So I'll leave any detailed comment around that, except we do make a comment on the deliverability of the program, and I'll leave that to be dealt with in the next paper. In terms of the KPIs, as a starting point for it, the KPIs that have been underperforming are the same KPIs as we've been reporting, I guess, for the past couple of years, Three Waters, and also the challenges we have in our consenting space. And those are the main headlines sitting there for as a point in comparison. So I'll just stop there. Happy to take any questions as we go, and we'll welcome feedback on the presentation and the content of the report. Our aim is to simplify it as much as is feasible and practicable, and make it more consumable and take a more visual approach to the whole program. So I'll just stop there.
Thank you, Lloyd. I've just got a couple of questions. Through doing this, putting this report together in this format, what sort of things have your team noticed in terms of, because I know this is the first time it's tried to align with more closely align with the priorities of the council?
Yes, and I guess if you recall our annual reports and our previous quarterly reports, we've aligned against activity areas rather than strategic priorities, and this one takes an explicit hit at looking at strategic priorities themselves. That has been an interesting exercise for the team in the sense that we've had a look at a very detailed look at, and at the front end of the report you'll see a table there which aligns many of the projects, and there's about 114 of those projects which either directly or in an enabling way support the delivery of those strategic priorities. And that's been quite a big exercise in getting that line of sight, but I think it's really helpful too, because we can start to then focus on the areas which are going to have a contribution to the delivery of those particular strategic priorities, and also feed into the wellbeings themselves. And on that point, you'll notice in I think at the end of the report, we for the first time are reporting against those wellbeings or our outcomes, and looking at and providing with direction on there. And I know Bronwyn wants to, on an ongoing basis, give a deep dive into some of those and give you more of a context context around that, what's driving those sorts of things as we go forward. So it's been the next evolution of how we report. And we haven't thrown the baby out with the bathwater. We've kept exception reporting and those sorts of things which we've had in the previous quarterly report, and it will continue to evolve and develop.
Okay. I do have a question about under the transport budget, the revenue for parking. I mean, it's down quite considerably, 30% to what's been budgeted. And I just wanted to know whether there's obviously more than just, it's understanding, yes, there's not as many people parking, but why isn't as many people parking? So understanding that, could officers address that for me, or is there still further work to be done? But I'd like to understand is a little bit more, other than the result, about what is excuse the pun, but what is non-driving or driving this result?
So the result that we're seeing in the current year, the vast majority of that is driven by COVID. So, and sorry, from memory, I think the negative variance for the 2 months that COVID primarily impacted was about 1.5 million. In P4, which isn't included in these results, that negative variance was about 765 from memory. So definitely seeing that drop. There will be some other impacts in parking that we will talk to you through the annual plan process and the annual plan cost pressures that we're still working through. But we are definitely seeing that that impact of COVID coming back a little bit and seeing higher revenue in this month.
Okay, thank you. And my next question is probably one directed, sorry, I should have given you a heads up, Ms. McKerrow, about this question, but really with this reporting, has this highlighted anything, well, from the senior executive that you think needs some more attention, or there's no surprises in this? I'm just wondering whether there's any. But, sorry, I should have briefed you on that before.
So, through you, Chair. So the executive leadership team receives a monthly report, and so we stay close to the detail of what's going on, the trends, and at a more detailed level than the reports we bring to you. And that's designed to make sure that we are managing in real time and mitigating risks. So the answer is there are no surprises in this. You can, of course, see, as we've just heard about parking, the impact of the current environment we're working in, with the impact of the pandemic on the way people behave, where they spend their time, and also the impact on the organisation, hence the report later on the agenda about the Capital Works program. So I think what I do think is the style of this reporting is a definite improvement. I hope you are finding it useful and more accessible. Happy to answer any more detailed questions.
Okay, thank you. And as if you've got any questions about the impacts, the capital expenditure, can I ask that you leave that to the next paper, if it's relevant to that? But Councillor Fern, you had a question?
Yes, thank you. Just really enjoying and finding new things as I'm going through, but just on the total city greenhouse emissions, we've got NR for a few of the years. What's NR? Not available? No results? Not relevant?
NR stands for not reported. At the moment, that indicator, we only had two sources of reports, one from Christchurch and one from ourselves over the last 5 years. Now that we have a fully established team that's working on that, we can pull that reporting in, and that is one particular area of interest where we want to come back with other supporting indicators to tell that story.
Great, how exciting. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions? Councillor Pannett.
Lloyd, first of all, thank you very much for the way you've presented this report. I found it good. There's quite a lot of numbers and everything, but still I still like the way of doing that. Barbara, a question for you. I was just reflecting on the fact that I know it's coming up in the next paper, but we did ask your predecessor too about the underspend of Kpis. And I know you've got some things in train, but there's a point at which we can't just keep saying we desperately want to spend the money, right? We want to make some more things happen. So I guess, is there anything else we can do to really escalate our efforts so that the city has confidence that we're getting some stuff done?
So through you, Chair, yes, absolutely. We have a very strong focus on delivery. This challenge of carry-forwards, chunks of carry-forwards in your capital program every year is a common challenge across every council, every territorial local authority in New Zealand. And it can range between 40%, down to single digits. But there are multiple levers to pull. Obviously, at the moment, that situation is exacerbated by the matters that are well explained in the coming report on the Capital Works program. But outside of that, it comes down to the way we plan, which is a system that both governance and management need to work on, because quite often the problem that you face in your long-term planning, both your 3 years and 10-year plan, is that there is a process of estimating the cost of projects well before any detailed design work happens. And when you start moving into the detailed design and mapping out the real project plan, it tends to mean that costs change, timeframes change, and risks change. And local authorities often also find that their ability to deliver a project within a particular timeframe can be impacted by the very real issues that members of the public raise with you, the issues that come out of resource consent processes. So it is a more complex environment, I believe, in which to drive a capital works program than a private sector company. Having said that, we are doing everything we can to put in place the right systems and processes over time to do a much better job of it than we have been doing. And I'm sure our Chief Infrastructure Officer will be happy to talk further about that.
Thank you. Any other questions? No. All right. Well, I'm going to move the paper. Thank you, officers. It's been really good. I know this is something that's been worked on for a few years, and the stars needed to align to sort of be able to deliver on this, not only with aligning the new LTP, but also making sure the tools and systems were in place to be able to deliver the information. I have talked with officers as well about, and this will be an improvement for next time at the 6 monthly pay, whereas that we almost have a public one-pager, and just in terms of summarising the information so that can accompany this. So looking at doing something like that, which is which will enable an even shorter summary of this report. So I'm going to move all these recommendations. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Foon, you keep putting your hand up, but I'm more than grateful for that. Or let Councillor it's all right, I'll let Councillor Pannett to second. Would you like to speak, Councillor Pannett? No one's speaking. Would anybody like to speak to this paper? No? Okay, well, look, I'm not going to do a right of reply other than just to acknowledge officers. I think, please, again, like the other paper, please accept this as that we're really very happy to see the improvement. We absolutely appreciate the amount of work and effort the team, Lloyd and Bronwyn and Baz have put into this to get us to this stage. So yes, we absolutely are all on board with this. So thank you. And so now we will move to. I'm going to take them all together as a whole, and I ask you to please vote now.
That's a yes from me.
Okay. Right, well, we are now, sorry. It was all unanimous? Okay, thank you, unanimous. Oh, Andy, it's a yes? Yeah. Sorry, the mayor's a yes? Yep. Yep, so that is carried unanimously. Now we are now moving to report 2.9 on page 519 of your agenda papers. And We had a Q&A session on this on Tuesday, but I will, if I can just invite officers up. I just, before we get into questions, could you just note that number 5, I'm adding in an additional resolution, and maybe one of or whether it's Siobhan or Liam could just talk briefly to that, just to give a heads up.
Can I just ask a quick question? Are we doing questions on this? We've already had a chance to do questions.
I'm just going to allow a couple of questions, but I just wanted, officers just need to,
Thanks, Madam Chair. There's just an officer request to amend the substantive, and that's on the basis that it was picked up in error. Councillors will recall that there was an announcement last week for the 44 Frederick Street Pocket Park site. So this is this development on Taranaki and Frederick Street that is a JV, if you like, with Morris Clark. Now, that was scheduled for payment, that is payment for the Pocket Park from Morris at 2024 originally. I think it was rephased to 2026, but in fact, it should have been brought forward. So there's approximately $3.8 million requiring to be spent next financial year as the sale and purchase agreement has accelerated, and Morris is very keen for that sale to take place. So that's an officer amendment requested of Council.
Are there any questions of officers on that particular point? Okay. And so we now have the main CapEx paper. Are there any final questions on that from anyone? Councillor Condi.
Thank you. I just had a couple of questions that were in the official Q&A that said they were going to be answered at this meeting. So one of them was about which playground renewals and community centres and halls will be affected by the proposed rescheduling.
Was that? I think that was that answered on Tuesday.
Did we get an answer to that?
We're just looking at the spreadsheets, Councillor Condi. I'll have to send it.
Haven't got it? Doesn't look like we've got that information yet, Councillor Condi.
Okay.
Sorry, Councillor Condi will send that to you offline as soon as we've got that information, and we'll share it with other councillors.
Thank you. One of the other questions was about the library materials upgrades, and I was just curious about how this part of CapEx is being affected by the construction market or supply chain issues, and whether those funds could be invested in different types of library materials in the short term.
So you're right, obviously, that it's not directly affected by the constraint within the construction market, but we are also making this the basis for next year's annual plan, and part of that budget for libraries material relates to the central library. So you'll see that partly that is being pushed out to, and we did the same with the carry forward when we brought the carry forwards to you in August, so that we have that budget available when we open the central library, because some of that budget is not being spent in the interim period. So I can get more detail from libraries on that, but that was some of the thought process with that rescheduling.
Yeah, some additional detail would be great. Thank you. Those were the only two questions.
Thank you, Councillor Condi. Councillor Young.
Thank you. I'm not quite sure to whom this question is directed. Just looking at the town hall refurbishment, where there are significant, the costs have and complexities have escalated significantly since inception with ongoing risk, and the council accepting risk on geotech. So I see the refurb is now 125 million, but I can't remember how much it was originally. Can anyone remember? I mean, it's just really what I'm asking is how much has that increased?
I would have to get back to you on that. I don't know if anyone...
So, because it leads on to my next question, which is going back earlier in the paper when it talks about I can't find it now. Suppliers and consultants being able to pick and choose the most profitable projects, and coming to the central library, where I see it is now its now value is now 201 million, so that's 7.3% more than we originally estimated. And I'm just wondering whether, looking at what's happened to the town hall, and bearing in mind they're in very similar locations, being on the coast, whether we should be expecting that figure to increase dramatically, or in line with the town hall increase, whatever that may be, and whether, in fact, because of all the risks around it, whether consultants will be wary of being involved.
Siobhan, could I answer the first one about the library? That figure is actually the inflated value over the term of the project. So the number that you agreed and saw originally was the uninflated value. What you see through the long-term plan, which is what that number reflects, is an inflated value in the out years. So that's why it's
So inflated to what year? Because, I mean, we know inflation is going up.
Yes, it was the assumptions we used in the LTP across each of those years had an inflationary number.
Okay.
And with the second part of the question, so we will obviously get more cost certainty as we progress through design. There will be contingencies built into that budget to account for that risk. As far as I understand it, the contracts are quite different between the town hall and the library as well. So there's always the risk of cost escalation with unknown ground conditions. I think they've done quite a lot of work on the library to know what those conditions are. So yeah, I can give you an answer which is potentially that there will be, but that will become more evident as we move through detailed design.
So the contract's been different. Is that because if we look at the town hall comment where it says council accepting risk on geotech and other aspects, is the council with the Central Library taking on more risks than it did under the contracts for the town hall?
I'd have to check on that specifically.
Thank you.
Thank you. Just to clarify, those particular projects, you'll be coming back through the infrastructure committee on how those projects are going. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Foon.
Kia ora, and I have actually asked this in an email, but I'd like to just get some certainty in this process. So this is understanding that some of the key strategies that we have in the long-term plan, particularly in this case the bike network plan, when will be the next opportunity we'll get to get better clarity on timeframes and next priority routes so that we've got certainty for our communities on that?
Liam, can you answer that in terms of when we're bringing it back?
Through you, Madam Chair, and thanks for your question, Councillor. Yeah, so when we report back on consultation and have the feedback from the community, we'll provide you, and noting your email and your request earlier, with a more detailed implementation plan for the secondary and primary network.
Thank you. I know. Sorry, Deputy Mayor Free.
Just alongside that, when you do report back on the bike network plan, can we also have some indication of the resealing program? Because there was that whole point made about Build Back Better and the synergies that could exist with that work and rolling out the bike network.
Yeah, we'll be able to provide you with those details of the resealing program. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, there's no further questions, so I will move this paper. Thank you to officers for bringing this to us. I mean, obviously, it's reality. We know, and we're hearing right across the country and even around the world that there are constraints around not only materials but also qualified staff to do the necessarily work. So essentially, it's not any digging the holes, so to speak, but it's also designing those holes to start with. So, we have to face reality, and thank you, officers, and understanding that what you've done is that you've looked at where the projects with the highest risks, they haven't started, haven't perhaps got the planning in place or all the resources lined up, and so I think that was it was a very good approach in which ones to look at. And as officers have advised us, is that it's very difficult just to pull one or two out or push one or two in at this stage. They've given us a holistic package, and we do know, and we've been hearing even through our health and safety report of the challenges on staff, getting staff, but then also the existing staff on their workload. So I think it's something for us all to be cognizant on as we look at what our plans are for the upcoming annual plan as well, of what we can actually deliver. So do I have a seconder? I just thought, Mayor, that you might like to second this one, or Councillor Rush?
Happy to second.
Okay. Mayor, would you like to speak?
Only just to say thank you to the officers for the work that's been done and putting this together. I think we've had some pretty clear signals, as you said, that the construction market is extremely hot, and it's even more challenging than usual to deliver what is an even more challenging than usual capital program. They're taking a pragmatic approach here. I guess I'm very pleased that some of the key projects are still there. I think the challenge, obviously, is some of the timing around, particularly the Cycleway area. I'm certainly looking to see orange vests and hard hats on site with Te Matapihi, which is, that would be the one I'd have been particularly concerned about if that had been delayed. And obviously, continuing great work that's been done on Takina Town Hall. Councillor Young, I noted the question that you asked, and I'll look forward to the answer, but we did have a paper a little while ago which signalled there had been some use of the contingency which we'd set aside. So, I just want to say thanks to the officers for a very sound paper.
Thank you, Mayor. Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor Fitzsimons?
Yeah, look, just very briefly, I feel like this paper is the canary in the mine, because basically what it is saying to us is that there are major gaps in our ability to deliver our ambitious capital program. And I'm particularly worried about them in the context of the work that we have to do on water infrastructure, transport infrastructure and urban development. And I just want to reiterate the comment that I've made in the past around the value of insourcing much of the work that is operating in these areas. And I do think that a internal modern council Ministry of Works type approach is likely to be something that would help us deliver the ambitious capital works program which we know our city needs, and I'm pleased that there's a paper coming about this soon.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Free, you should speak.
Yeah, just to say that I think we need to be realistic, and I'm really pleased and thank the staff that they've put some thought into how best to cope with the situation that we find ourselves in. We always knew that this was a very ambitious LTP, but at the time when we passed it, we were actually in level 1. We didn't have COVID. Unfortunately, COVID has resurged in our country, and it's having a very long tail effect on many, many things, including workforce, sourcing materials from overseas and internally, and just the ability to get things done on the ground. It may yet get worse before it gets better, but let's hope that we can, with this adjusted program, deliver what we have set out to do in this paper. So thank you. This isn't something that we necessarily, it doesn't come as a complete surprise. It's a disappointment, but not a complete surprise. But I think this at least sets out the realities of where we're at and a way through it. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Pennant.
Yeah, look, I mean, I have really serious concerns about this paper. I appreciate staff for doing the best job they can in difficult circumstances, so it's not a criticism at all. But just given Ms Makuro's comments about the constant undelivery of projects in our sector, it's not just about this lot of projects which have been rescheduled. There'll be others which then flow on because we just never seem to be able to deliver enough. And this has serious implications for obvious reasons. It means that we can't build as many houses. It means we can't upgrade our council housing. We can't get our Cycleway program going as quickly as possible. And, continuously aware of our 2030 deadline to make some really serious emission cuts, and to do that we have to build. Green though, obviously, not with lots of too much concrete and steel. So I mean, look, you know, I just want to express some serious concern, particularly as the chair of the planning committee, that people will be coming back to us and saying, where are our cycleways? We just had a difficult debate on Island Bay, and some of that money's being postponed. And so obviously, yeah, I just want to be really clear, I'm not at all happy. So I guess it's maybe incumbent on us to work with our CE to do everything we can to make sure that we support more work to be done to give confidence to the city and to other providers outside that we want to get things achieved as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Pannett. Now, Councillor Ross, did you have your hand up before? We weren't sure. Okay, right. So we'll now go to Councillor Condi, then Councillor Matthews.
Thank you. And I just wanted to reflect a little bit on what you were saying, Deputy Mayor, about COVID has really resurged and changed the environment. Because when we made these decisions, I went back and looked, we made the LTP decisions on the 27th of May. And at that time, it looked like Australia pretty much had their Delta outbreak under control. Sydney had just come out of a set of restrictions in response to Delta. Victoria had 26 cases of Delta and were going into statewide lockdown that I think we all assumed would work just as effectively as it worked in the past. So we made these decisions at a time when we knew that there were market constraints, but not to the extent that we've seen. The changes we've seen in the past 5 months have been significant. And just really acknowledging as well that even though Wellington hasn't been in such harsh lockdown, that we often use a lot of resource from Auckland when we need specialist crews or we need extra staff, and we haven't been able to access those staff because they can't come down from Auckland across the border. So even those things have made a really big impact. So I just want to thank staff for all the work that they've done trying to figure out a way through this, and for commissioning the report from Morrison Lowe that gives us a really clear direction forward about how we can try looking over the next 3 to 5 years about trying to build capacity, what changes that we can make to make it easy to work with us so that contractors want to deliver projects for council, because we know that it is really important that we can deliver on our ambitions in water infrastructure, transport infrastructure, just as Councillor Pennant was just talking about. So appreciate all the work and look forward to supporting and seeing that develop and hopefully very soon so that we can continue delivering for the city. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Condi. Councillor Matthews.
Just very briefly, I wanted to sort of think about this in a different way and, you know, think about really this is a reflection of the ambitions of our plans and the size of the challenges that we face, you know, and not just Wellington, but throughout the country, the sort of years of underinvestment in all sorts of infrastructure and I guess failing to deliver some of those things. So I think that it is a sign of the ambitions of our plans, and we need to keep looking at this as challenges that we overcome over the coming years. And, you know, I do think about those kind of cycleway conversations we had, and we, you know, that we are, you know, being able to adapt some of the things we do to take innovative approaches and do things a little bit differently given the constraints. So, you know, I think that we can, you know, to have a positive kind of framing at it, that we do have ambitious plans for the city. There is a lot that needs to be done. We might need to look a little bit at how and when, and, you know, I take those comments about pressure on people, you know, very seriously, but I also think that potentially it's a very exciting time for our city, and that if we can build the capacity to deliver these projects, Wellington could look very different. And so, you know, keeping an eye on that big picture as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Foon.
Kia ora, and yeah, just following on from Councillor Matthews, I think, you know, what is the phrase about when the going gets tough, the tough get going? And I know that it's the end of the year and our team are under a lot of constraint, but I just want to back up on that innovation conversation, but particularly thank officers for bringing the report from, is it Morrison and Lowe? That was really useful. But also for the innovative approach they're taking on how we mitigate these risks around procurement, what Meredith talked about before, sharing the risk or sharing team with other councils in space, detailed project timelines and dedicated talent acquisition strategy. And I understand there's a review on just what we're paying our people, because that's obviously a big challenge for us. So, I just thank officers for that and thank them for bringing the positive what we can do about the situation to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers? Okay, look, I'll go to write a reply, and there's a few things. Councillor for Simons, I thought your wording canary in the mine was very appropriate, and we've been hearing that canary in the mine actually for quite some time, even before. I think it was Councillor Condi mentioned May. We were hearing from the Infrastructure Commission earlier on of constraints in materials and in resourcing, and this is, we've got to be realistic here. We were bringing it forward, a carry forward, and plus we're now only 1 quarter into our long-term plan of 10 years, 3 months into our 10-year plan, and we are having to already significantly reschedule. So this shouldn't come as a surprise as much as some people are saying, because the warning signs, the canary was whistling as early this year. Oh, they died. Was it gone? Okay, dead. Well, it's gone. So. And look, Councillor Pan, people are asking where the cycleways are. Actually, more people are actually asking where the houses are. And more people are asking, what about where's the water infrastructure? Where's that? Those are what more people are asking about. And so we have a lot of priorities, and we are going to have to make some really tough decisions. I agree we have to be ambitious, and when you're often the ambitious is in your visioning. But we actually have to make sure that the plans that we set out, and of course we've got an annual plan coming through, and that's going to be very challenging, because we have to build in the risks of we just don't know some things, and I think that's probably what we probably didn't build in enough with that long-term plan, that we didn't really understand what was coming next, but knowing that something was coming next, because Delta was already in the rest of the world. It just hadn't hit our shores at that point quite to the extent it has now. So once again, thank you just to the officers. I know it's a difficult task. You're having to present something to the political governance body, and we've all got our own views of where we should be spending money and where we shouldn't. But I think it's been a very fair approach. So I intend to move them all the recommendations together, unless anybody wants anything taken separately, which I don't see. So, okay, let's move to vote, please. Wow, carried unanimously. Thank you. We're on a roll. I think we've got one last paper, haven't we? I know, but I picked up the Southway. So sorry, Councillor Panish. If I misrepresented you, I apologise. I just heard cycleways. I wasn't, but it just sort of went. Nobody said it was a surprise. Well, quite. I think you commented, but anyway, we won't get into it. We'll move on. Okay. Anyway, let's move on to the next paper. And this is in relation to our procurement strategies, page 499. And you'll be pleased to know it is our last paper, and we're doing well. It's only midday.
Chair, you've got 2 minutes.
Yeah. Right. Okay, questions of officers. Councillor Rush.
Question, sorry, can I just introduce Houston Burke, who's my acting procurement manager. He's on the line. He will work with me to answer any questions. Is there anything you want to say, Houston, to introduce the paper briefly?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Kia ora koutou.
Yeah.
The Te Upoko I Te Ika a Māui commitment is here to assist with the natural evolution of procurement practice here at Council, to move the procurement function to a modern centre of excellence, to put social, cultural, economic and environmental outcomes, or what we have termed as broader outcomes, at the heart of our commercial decision making, along with our core values of delivering value for money for Wellington ratepayers. An element of this evolution is a focus on the Māori economy to enhance the overall prosperity of the region and create meaningful partnerships with mana whenua.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Rush.
Yeah, I'm not sure who to, but what's the qualification to be a supplier in this project? Or is that being worked through?
So there's two ways that an entity can register as a Māori or Pacifica supplier at the moment. One is through MB with their national business number. That's a reasonably low bar. The second is an organisation called Amatai, who work with Indigenous suppliers and keep that register of suppliers and provide that information to organisations wishing to access that information, to tender from there. And they have more of a robust process to be on their register and also offer support. Anything you want to add to that, Euston?
No, Sarah, it's covered.
Okay.
So there's no formal 51% shareholding, it's a case-by-case thing. And
the 50% ownership, Euston? At least?
It's the Australian report talked about 51%.
So it's they register with MB or the NZBN, but it's voluntary, and it's 50% Māori owned is the threshold.
Have we got a sense of how many suppliers would be in and around the Wellington region?
Overall, so Amatai and MB have 1,000 supplies registered. I'd have to do some research to see what that equates to regionally.
Okay, thanks. All right.
Thank you. Councillor Day.
A bit distracted there.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, this is fantastic, really a great paper to read. Is there going to be a comms plan with this? And I see that the Regional Council has signed their one. Will we have the same opportunity to show our support as councillors and to, make a public thing of this?
Yes, is the answer. We were a little bit slower than some of our counterparts in getting on board. Mainly that was my team's resourcing and availability. So yes, we can
build a comms plan for it because it doesn't say in the report. But
yeah, there is a communications plan for the overarching procurement strategy, so we can specifically call this out.
I think it would be good because it's such a.
If the council wanted to agree who a spokesperson from a governance level would like to be, we're happy to.
Yeah, I think we could work with the mayor on that because one of the resolutions is the mayor signs this off. So I just wonder whether.
I guess my question is just that I can see that another council, they have all signed it, it's a very strong message of support from a council, and whether we should put that into the process. I just think it is very powerful.
Very happy to see that.
Cool.
There you go.
Don't do amendment, no. We don't need to do an amendment, do we? Andy, we don't need to do an amendment. You can just make sure that you give us all a page to sign and show our support.
Yep. Yeah, we'll get it done.
Okay, thank you. I don't think that no other questions, so I will move this paper. I do, I've
got a question.
Oh, who's that?
Liz.
Oh, sorry, Liz. Sorry, I didn't see that. Go ahead.
Oh, kia ora. I just think that this is a great initiative, but I did want to highlight, because there is a number of Māori and Pacific networks in Pūroro and in Wellington. In Wellington we have Te Awi, and in Pūroro we've got Awarua, and Otaki there's Te Ropua Pakaki. But I note that there was an invitation sent out inviting Māori businesses to participate in shaping the economic future of council. And given that you're targeting business people, I just think that maybe you need to think about the timing of your workshops, because 10 o'clock to 11:30 is actually really quite busy times for businesses. So just want to put that out there. And happy to, if you like, as well, happy to connect you to the Māori business networks, if that's helpful.
Thank you.
Yep.
Actually, can I just say one more thing?
Yep.
If you're interested, Awarua has a network meeting tonight at Gia Homestead at 5:30, and you're very welcome to come, because you'll meet a lot of Māori businesses there, and Helmut Modlik is the guest speaker. Just putting a plug in there.
Okay, that's great. Liz, is that just a question from me, just on your points? Is that not only in relation to this this proposal, but also to the council's own development of its economic wellbeing strategy?
Yeah, I think it is, but it was sent out to us to encourage Māori businesses to participate in it and for it to be circulated. But my point is that it's the timing, eh? That's when businesses are busy.
Okay, thank you. All right. I think there's no more questions, so I will move the recommendations. I think as I was saying, is that actually this is really giving effect to our strategic intent, and officers have gone away and working with the regional, our other regional counterparts. So it's really a case of, dare I say, rubber stamping. Sorry. Well, it's what we decided. So, so look, I was just looking for a second, Councillor Day. Thank you. Would you like to speak? Okay, thank you.
That's awesome. That's all I need to say.
Yeah. Would anybody else like to speak? Councillor Rush.
I just can't believe that it's taken this long to get something like this together. This is the sort of thing that oil and gas companies all over the world do with local businesses where they're working, and certainly in Taranaki. And I was privileged actually to do a study for MB on how we would bring Māori businesses into the oil and gas community, and it certainly works. And I'm just a little bit cautious that we need to make sure that the businesses we are working with are truly Māori businesses. But nevertheless, this is a great initiative, if overdue.
Anybody else like to speak? Councillor Foon. Sorry. So did you have your hand up? No. Restrain yourself, Councillor Foon.
Shout out to Creative HQ through Wellington NZ, as this initiative has come through them.
Thank you. Okay, wow, that's a record for. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. My only right of reply is that it's been so good having you, Councillor Rush, on board with your oil and gas experience to have led us into. So. Oh, sorry, there's a movie. What's that movie? Privilege. Anyway, I just thought we needed to finish on a lighter note.
Be like the oil and gas industry.
Oh, sorry, oil and gas industry.
Disciplined.
Anyway, so sorry, we are finishing early, so that's the end of my right to reply. Let's vote.
Oh dear. I think it takes 3 minutes. Can you release
No, I'm going to tap you for the rest of your life.
And that was unanimous. So, okay. Now we will, if we could stand for the closing karakia, please. Unahia, 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 ki te uru tapanui, kia wātea, kia mama, te nāko, te tinana, te wairua, I te ara takatū, koe rā e rongo, whakaria aki ki runga, kia wātea, ai rā, ku wātea. Thank you all.
Well done, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. It was actually a team effort because everybody helped.
Yep. Kpi.
Nicola, do you like milk chocolate?
No, I don't.
It's got like the